All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. We're here with our now we're here with our now regular panel. That's pretty good. I don't know how he did that, but that's pretty good.
That's really
Um, we're here with Grant Phillips from the Modern
fun,
Libertarian,
everybody.
and we are capitalists. I'm going to get that on the screen. We're here with. We also have our new panelist, Julia Aaron from Alpha News. You also can follow her page. She has a fan page by her name, Julia Aaron, and you could follow Alpha News, which has their own page. Certainly, if you're in Minnesota, it's really pertinent to you. But for everyone else, she does follow national news. We have also Papa Kevin. Everybody calls him Papa Kevin because he was alive during the Civil War, and he is the oldest person on this broadcast by a mile. And here we have High School Grant Phillips, who obviously was, really grew into himself. I think I'd like to say. I mean, we all had our moments, except for Julie, obviously, who was born
That was actually
stunning.
that was actually 2 years ago.
It was.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
I developed
you
quickly.
admitted that.
And we have Michael Lee from being classically liberal and everything else, who's the new Matt Palumbo. I want to start the show off. We have some big news. One, Julia is on our show, which is awesome. I know she has a huge male libertarian following, obviously because she's a great reporter.
So do you.
Yeah, I know, right? I do, and that's kind of weird. But Rand Paul dropped out of the race today, which is kind of a big deal among libertarians because up until 2 days ago they were predicting a quote-unquote Rand slide in Iowa and saying that the polls were misleading, in which they were correct. The polls were in some cases misleading, but the caucuses, in caucuses that usually happens as opposed to primaries. But what do you think, Grant? I mean, now that Rand has exited the race, do you think, one, that was a good move? And two, do you like that he's not endorsing any other candidate while you eat your sandwich?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. You talked so long; it was very easy. I think it was a really good move for him to drop out. I mean, I don't know if I can't. I guess I can't really say if he definitely would have lost the Senate seat if he stayed longer or anything like that. But I think if you're going to run a presidential campaign at this point, you better be in it to win it, and you better have a good chance of winning it, just because it costs a lot of money. And I'm sure that his father was helping to bankroll it, and I mean that can't help the nonprofit fund. But overall, it was a good strategy. I mean, either Cruz or Paul was going to get the majority of the conservative votes, and it was obviously going to be Cruz. So I think he did a good job to back out of it. And I'm actually really surprised he did it so soon after Iowa. I was thinking it'd be at least another week.
Me too. I
Like another caucus, and then he would have been out.
I thought he was going to wait till after New Hampshire and see how he did there.
Yeah.
Mike, same questions. Do you think I mean, what do you think? Grant, I don't know if you addressed. What do you think about him not endorsing anybody?
Oh, I mean, I kind of wish he endorsed Cruz. I can see why he didn't.
Yeah.
Because he was sort of out of the debate, and he kind of had a little bit of a whiny in there. But I wish he didn't endorse Cruz. That would have helped Cruz a lot.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, yeah, I think Grant hit the nail on the head. It was the right time for him to drop out. I am surprised. I thought he might hang around for New Hampshire. There's a lot of libertarian support in New Hampshire, so I thought he might try to stick around and see how he did there. But it was probably a good time for him to drop out. He's facing a tough Senate challenge. They're really trying to raise a lot of money to kick him out of the Senate, and he probably does need to focus on that because he wasn't going to win. He wasn't going to win the nomination as much as any of this panel might have wanted him to, and I definitely wanted him to. He wasn't going to win. Dropping out before New Hampshire is good timing. I think not all of it, but a lot of that support will go to Ted Cruz. I wish he would have endorsed Ted Cruz, and I think maybe he still will. I just think maybe it's a little bit early for that. Once you see the campaign start to thin out the herd a little bit, maybe he will throw his support behind Ted Cruz. But I thought the timing was right for Rand Paul. I'm disappointed because I really had high hopes for him going into the election, but it was time for him to step aside.
Yeah, I might agree with you, and we'll get Kevin in on this. But I don't think that any other endorsements matter. I think that Rand Paul's matters for the kind of the Liberty movement vote. That it gives, like, how skeptical these, a lot of poll bots are about, and libertarians are about supporting anybody but what they consider the libertarian standard bearer. And I think that if he were to say, I endorse Ted Cruz, that would give him credibility among those libertarian vote. Not that I think that the libertarian vote is pivotal. I just think that if any support would help. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I think that people had higher hopes for him going into Iowa because, I mean, that was the state that his dad did well in last time around. His dad finished in third place and actually got a lot of votes. But that support really didn't translate over to support for Rand, and I think you've seen that a lot actually too in discussions with people. We have a lot of libertarians following our pages, and right from the get-go, people were like, "No, I'm not going to support Rand. He's a fake libertarian." People had problems with him that they didn't necessarily have with his father in terms of the liberty movement type. So I just think he was hoping to get more support from that, and it was supposed to be an election that finally brought the libertarian side to the forefront of the Republican Party. It just never happened, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen. Certainly not this election. I don't think libertarians are going to want to vote for Rand. I mean, for any of the candidates that are left. I think you basically just, instead of his votes going to some other candidate, I think those people will probably become disaffected and not even vote like a lot of libertarians are prone to doing.
Right. But do you think a lot of that's not that, Ron Paul had a ton of support in 2012 and 2008, but there were smaller fields too. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how much that splits that vote, or if some people do grow out of the Ron Paul movement. I know I have friends that in 28 were these fervent Ron Paul supporters and have steadily kind of moved away from the movement as they've gotten a little older. I don't know why.
Well,
go ahead.
What you should mention is that when Rand Paul got into the race, and I think we all knew Rand Paul was going to jump in, he was the guy that was against the Washington establishment. He was that kind of guy that was supposed to be, on the other side of the fence away from the establishment. Then you had Trump jump in, you had Cruz jump in, you had Carson jump in, and these are people that are going to be competing with Rand for that same kind of vote. And I don't think that's something that a lot of people counted on. Yeah, he's going to get some of the libertarian-leaning people, but just the anti people in general. That got split among about 4 candidates, and I don't know if the Paul camp really planned on that at the start.
Julia, you correct me if I'm wrong. You went to Iowa, right?
Yes, I did.
You did. You were at the Iowa Fair, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was there a large contingency of Rand supporters there?
Well, Rand Paul was actually not one of the people to speak at the soapbox at the Iowa Fair because he was in another country performing medical service for those who couldn't afford it. But it was interesting to see sort of how many people today in my news feed who were original Rand supporters were now saying, I'm not supporting anyone. So I definitely think, they're right as far as when they're saying they don't think anyone's going to support him or switch their support from him to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think I saw one gal actually, that's high up in YAL, or Young Americans for Liberty, say, now that now that Rand's out, only Kasich and Rubio can win. What? You know what I mean? It seems like that. And I hear a lot of libertarians telling me too that nobody likes Cruz. You know what I mean? I hear things that people in the media and the left say that these people start to attack specifically Ted Cruz from the left. That he's owned by Goldman Sachs, and it's just like he took out a loan from Goldman Sachs. So I don't know. It seems like a lot of their criticisms of Cruz, not any other candidate, specifically Cruz, tend to come more from the left. Do you notice that, Julia? From she might have. Okay.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about you guys, Kevin? Do you see that too?
Kind of, but I think that what it really is going to boil down to is which of these guys. Hey, someone left here. I'm getting that.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah, if some of these guys, how are they going to face off in the general election? And when you ask that question, he's definitely probably the most hated on the left. in terms of whether or not he's ever going to get any crossover support. Although Trump is up there too, but that's more of a personality issue, I think, than a issue with his policy stances. But I don't know. I think Rubio still has the best shot of beating the Democrat this year. I just think Cruz is not going to do well in the general election atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, I don't think he's going to pick up moderates, and I don't think he's going to pick up anybody on the Democratic side. Whereas I think somebody like a Rubio could pick up some people on the, and with the more moderates and maybe even some Democrats. Trump will pick up some, actually, even though he's got such bad favorable numbers, because he's just such a unique candidate. I just don't see a lot of crossover appeal for Cruz at all. And I'm not saying that as a criticism of him. I'm just pointing it out, because I think a good candidate should stick to the issues. And in fact, when they asked Iowa voters what they voted for the most, 41% of them said somebody who has views that match their own.
Values, right?
Values that match their own, whereas only something like 15% said they voted for a candidate who tells it like it is, i.e. Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll challenge the one contention that he can't win in a general and that he can't appeal to people, or in the middle. I don't think necessarily elections are won by appealing to people in the middle. I think elections are won by broadening your base. And I think, and you guys, I'll get Grant in on this one, I think Ted Cruz actually got the most votes by any Republican candidate in Iowa ever, with such a huge field and such a ginormous turnout. I mean, pollsters predicted that if there was a turnout of over 180,000, I think there was 187,000 that turned out, which is a record, that Trump would win. And it seems to me that, certainly with Cruz opposing the ethanol mandates, the RFS, the renewable fuel standards, for him to come out with so many votes seems to me that he increased the voter turnout. He was speaking to conservatives that usually don't turn out, and he kind of broadened his base. And I'm thinking that certainly that's more difficult to do in New Hampshire, which is a more liberal Republican state. South Carolina, he may be able to do it, but I don't know why it wouldn't translate to a general. I think he gets more people, the base particularly, ramped up more than a Rubio. I'm not saying that Rubio couldn't win in a general. I'm just saying that Rubio may have some problems with the base. What do you think, Grant?
I kind of agree with Kevin, but I will say that as from a moderate standpoint, he is really easy to attack. But where I do disagree with Kevin, however, is I don't think that will cost him an election. It wouldn't cost him a general election. I think that if it's Cruz versus Hillary, a lot of Republicans, or even some moderates who don't like Hillary, might show up and vote against Hillary by voting for Ted Cruz. At the same time, again, if it's a Bernie Sanders, not many Democrats, as far as a voting base goes, identify as socialist. So that they might show up and vote against Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I do see that Rubio definitely has more crossover appeal. I think Cruz actually has the best shot of actually winning the presidency of any of the candidates currently.
Look, if Rand and Cruz got into, if they were in a general, they would both encounter the same problems. Look, Rand's going to be challenged in his re-election bid in the Senate by the establishment. The establishment does not like Rand Paul. So you're going to see them go after him, certainly in Kentucky, for his re-election bid. The same thing's going to happen. If this wasn't Cruz that was the constitutionally conservative front runner, and it was Rand, he would encounter all the same problems that Cruz is encountering right now. So I see a little difference between them as it relates to strategy and going forward. It's just that Cruz ran a better campaign. That's it. Cruz ran a better campaign. I wanted to get into the differences between them next.
Will,
go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of get in on that too. There's a couple reasons that I think that Cruz has more of a chance to win the general than people give him credit for, and Grant touched on this a little bit. The Democratic candidates aren't exactly desirable for multiple reasons. So the other side of the field isn't that great. General election polling is also really undependable this far out, but that's usually because people don't know who the candidates are in a large field. Cruz polls very well against Hillary and Sanders in those polls currently, and he only will grow as people find out who he is. So I think that's a good indication for Cruz. But the last and the biggest reason for me is, and I don't really understand this narrative from people, Republicans have nominated people that were supposed to be electable and center of the road the last two elections. That was supposed to be McCain. That was supposed to be Romney. There's no enthusiasm for those kind
It
of
was
candidates.
supposed to be Dole too, and Bush. And Bush lost the popular vote.
But
So-
unlike them, I think Rubio is a real conservative. I mean, if you look at his,
I do think
You know?
Rubio is more of a conservative than those, and I said this earlier today, that if Rubio is an establishment candidate, that shows you how far the winds have shifted since 2008, because in 2008, Rubio would have been no one would have seen him as establishment. He would have been an outsider. But I do think that Cruz can rally conservatives, can get them to, big-time grassroots campaign, a lot of enthusiasm, mixed with some unpopular candidates on the other side. I don't think Cruz would have a problem winning a general election at all.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Rubio because I followed him, Cruz, and Paul and Mike Lee. And when Rand did the Gang of Eight thing, the first thing I thought was, I don't think he ever wants to run for president. That was my first conclusion. Is like this is gonna kill him in a presidential election. I don't think he's certainly not. If you look at his voting record, it's certainly not in line with the establishment. He's certainly more conservative. But in politics, reality is perception, and he has, run kind of as the establishment candidate to the point where him and Jeb Bush are still duking it out for that establishment bloc. I'm not saying that he is, but I'm just saying that if you position yourself that way, that could hurt you, certainly in the primary among the base. I think one of the biggest things mistakes that he did, was to go after Ted Cruz on amnesty. That he was a flip-flopper, which kind of exposed, Rubio and the Gang of Eight. I think that kind of backfired for him. He definitely has the wind at his back here. From Iowa, he did better than people thought he did, but he had a great showing. We'll see what happens when we go into New Hampshire. But these guys a little bit, Julia. You've interviewed them. I know Rubio. Rubio's a really nice guy. He's really charismatic. He's very likable. I think that helps him in general. What do you think about? You've interviewed Ted Cruz. Would you say the same thing about him?
Personally, Ted was my favorite one to interview while I was down in Iowa. He was very, very, very kind and charismatic. In fact, right after we finished interviewing him, he was attacked by, the girl who played Juno, the actress Ellen Page, and he handled it very, very well. I also interviewed Rubio, like you mentioned, and same thing, very nice and charismatic. But who running in this race, isn't aside from Trump? And but one thing I did notice was that Rand Paul had tweeted something along the lines of, maybe I'll release all my policy positions now early so Cruz can get a jump start on copying them 2 weeks later. Did you notice that at all? Like, did you notice that Rand would release a position and then Cruz would sort of come out with something exactly similar?
Did I?
Yeah.
Look, here, the thing about Rand and Ted is they've always had similar positions, that they're both constitutionally principled guys, and they derive their principles from the Constitution. The only thing that, when we talk, this is what I wanted to get into, and I talked with Mike a little bit about this, the only thing that separated them really was rhetoric. And I think that what Rand was smartly trying to do was try to get some of Ted's support. I think that was a smart move to do. But they both know that, they both were they were at that IRS rally to abolish the IRS. These guys are, Rand mentioned in an interview, he had a great interview with Bret Baier this summer on his positions, in which he called himself a libertarian conservative. And his views are, he has a Reagan-esque foreign policy, but he just didn't choose to, he chose to paint himself more as a non-interventionist. He's certainly not an isolationist, but he just kind of wanted to contrast himself from the establishment of the party. Whereas Ted Cruz has a very similar Reagan-esque foreign policy, but used different rhetoric, that if I wage war against ISIS, I'm going to crush ISIS and annihilate ISIS, where Rand, I think, has a similar position. He mentioned that in that same interview with Bret Baier, but just chose not to run on it. Mike, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I've said this all along. When you're talking about the difference between Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, you're really splitting hairs. Yes, there are some differences. I remind people what kind of launched Rand Paul into the national spotlight. It was that 13-hour filibuster he had on drone strikes, right? I know most registered voters don't have a memory that long, but during that filibuster, Ted Cruz spoke for probably a combined 2 hours in support of Rand Paul during that filibuster. He was right there with Rand almost the entire time. These guys have almost exactly the same principles. The only difference really between them is how they choose to like you said, rhetoric, how they choose to speak about them, and how they've run their campaigns. Yeah, there's going to be some minor differences. I actually agree a little. I think the nuances of Ted Cruz's foreign policy positions are better than Rand Paul's. I like a lot of Rand Paul's domestic policy positions better than Cruz. But at the end of the day, these guys are very similar candidates, and just the hate for one and the love of the other is extremely confusing to me.
Yeah, a lot of that I think, does come from the media. What do you think, Kevin? I mean, Ted Cruz is painted in the media. He's hated by the establishment. The left really hates this guy. He's often called hard right, extreme right. I mean, I hear Republicans, and I talk to people. A lot of people know that I'm into this, and they always say, "Oh no, he's too religious," or "he's too hard right." This is coming from Republicans, and I'll let you routinely ask, "Well, what positions is he too hard right on?" And it's crickets. So somebody's painting these things as I've yet to hear an example of what this hard right or extreme right is, and I feel that a lot of this does come from narratives.
Yeah, I think the narrative, the biggest narrative that they're building about Ted Cruz is that his own party hates him, and not necessarily the voters, but his own, the established, the powers that be, the leadership hates him, and they're actually making this an election where the Republicans are fighting against their own candidates, and that's something you hear a lot on CNN and Fox News and so forth. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. I think that there's definitely certain establishment candidates that are more well liked by the leadership and haven't bucked the leadership as much as these other guys have.
Right.
And that's probably where the friction begins, is when they don't fall in line like they're supposed to.
I want to remind you guys, though. Remember when Rand Paul when he first announced, he had a little momentum there, and McCain came out with why Rand Paul would be the most dangerous president. Lindsey Graham, I think, said when he threw in for the presidency was that he was running to prevent Rand Paul from becoming president. So, I mean, the establishment despises him. It was just that he never caught on, and they never focused on him as much as they're focusing on Ted Cruz.
Well, all these people, a lot of these candidates came about from the Tea Party movement and were propelled into the spotlight. Rubio as well came from that movement. And, I'm not sure I understand the nuances behind the ones that are liked by the establishment or the leadership of the Republican Party, and the ones that are disliked, other than like I said, they sort of don't fall in line as much as someone like maybe a Rubio does. But even he, I mean, he's definitely a conservative, and he has a lot of appeal from the Tea Party types and from the establishment. So that's why I remind people, I think he does have the best chance.
Julia, do you ever have an impression of a candidate before you interview them, just stemming from what you hear in the mass media, and then you realize, wow, that's not really the kind of guy I thought he was? Or does that happen?
Absolutely. Without naming names, there was one candidate that I very much liked, and then we interviewed, and I spent a day following them around, and was no longer a fan after that. I could tell there was a definite act being put on. But then there's also been candidates where I wasn't sure if I was going to like them, and then they were just so wonderful in person that I was like, I'm going to keep my eye on this one. So it's definitely important, if you have the opportunity to see a candidate in person, to take that opportunity, even if it means waiting outside in line for hours at a time.
Name names. I want to know who.
I can't yet, but maybe in my tell-all book in 30 years.
Please don't include Will in that book.
I'll probably have a whole chapter dedicated to me, but anyway, Grant, you're perhaps the most, I would say, libertarian person here, even though I don't, whatever. From that standpoint of the pure libertarian standpoint, what do you think? What are the differences that bothered you about Cruz from the beginning as opposed to Rand? I mean, I supported both equally, and I said it from the get-go of the show that I think both of them are great candidates and both can win, and I support both. But why is it that some libertarians are averse to Cruz and more prone to Rand?
Well, the reason I was more prone to Rand, which is I think is different than what libertarians I've at least encountered today, was that Rand was selling a bigger message and he was marketing it to a wider demographic. Like he was selling liberty, let's say, to more people, and it was catching on to a lot, and including like minority communities who traditionally are very left-wing, vote Democrat 100% of the time. That really appealed to me. I didn't think he'd win my primary, but it really appealed to me. And I also don't like that Cruz. When people say Cruz is a moralist, I actually agree with that, and I don't think he'd be very enthusiastic to roll back a lot of social laws that that the executive can, like rescheduling drugs and that sort of thing. And I don't think he'd be quick to do that. If anything, he'd just promise he would and then not. So that's what drew me to him. But again, like Mike was saying earlier, you're splitting hairs here. You know, if I get to choose between Ted Cruz, who I kind of sort of disapprove of, versus freaking like the next idiot in line, that's a huge jump for me. Like if libertarians are going to ignore Cruz and sort of spend their time bashing him, realize that is how you get a Trump-Sanders election.
Yeah,
I think that's what the dice is. I don't mean to say that libertarians are like a deciding vote or anything, but that they're pushing their influence the wrong way, let's say.
Would you agree that libertarians don't give Trump enough credit for his foreign policy, which is similar to that of Cruz and Rand Paul?
I don't really take Trump seriously on anything. I don't know. He's kind of just an idiot in general.
Trump.
A Trump-Sanders ticket is terrifying to me. I can't even like conceive of that.
Trump is not
a vote for Donald Trump, and two, that would just suck. Tariff war with China, great.
All Donald Trump is a Jeb Bush filled with bombast. That's it. That's the only difference. Look, Trump's wrong on the issues. Do I think Trump is stupid? No. I don't think Bernie Sanders is stupid. No. These guys are obviously. You're not going to be worth $10 billion and be a dummy. And Bernie Sanders, who obviously never had a job in his life, but isn't going to perform so successfully in a presidential election and be a senator for so many years and be a dummy. These guys know what they're doing. Bernie knows what he's doing. Bernie knows what most of what he's saying is such crap, and he's just playing on emotions.
No, he doesn't.
Sure he does.
No, he's not. He's senile.
No, he doesn't. After all his tax plan, there's no way that this man is just a snake oil salesman.
If you read what Bernie Sanders wrote when he was in college and through the 80s, he's actually tempered back a lot of what.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that the man's not a kook, but I mean, you could say, look, he's playing to emotions that your health care is going to be free, your college is going to be free. He's saying what most Democrats want to say but won't come out of the closet and say it. And I really don't think that there's any much difference between him and Hillary, other than one's more admitted that one will admit more that she wants to, go full bore socialism. I mean, literally, if we're really talking about, they're both fascists, and it's a matter of degree, and it's percentage points. It's literally the percentage points of what Hillary won Iowa that separates them in their ideology.
I think Hillary wants to do it because, and I hate the word, but because she's a statist. She's a state centrist. Like she wants the power. I think Bernie actually thinks it will help people. Like I think he genuinely believes that he is improving the lives of people by changing their capital gains tax from 28 to 60% or whatever it is. And he doesn't think that anything will go wrong.
Or the payroll tax to 6.2%. What?
I for one have way too many choices of deodorant when I go to the supermarket.
Yeah, and he doesn't look to understanding differentiation and markets and price discrimination, and this guy, you really just need to take a basic economics class. You know what I mean?
Increase the capital gains top rate from 20% to 62%, and his health care plan literally assumes that revenue will be proportionately the same.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be no decrease in revenue when you triple a tax rate in capital gains.
And not only that, I think the Tax Foundation scored his policy and said there's just no way that this would ever pay for his health care proposal. It's not even close. You know what I mean? And even Democrats are attacking him on that. I think Ezra Klein actually attacked him on that. So, I mean, and Ezra Klein, that guy, they're full-bore Marxist in my opinion. But, gosh, what was my next point? I should write that down. I can't remember necessarily what I wanted to get into now. It's killing me.
The media.
Was it the media? No, it was. I wanted to move on from the media. I can't remember. Anyway, I was going to ask Mike a question. I think it was about. This is what it was. It was about defining what the establishment is and what the status quo is. Because I've heard a lot of people say that, these Tea Parties, tea baggers are reactionaries. This is another one I hear, and I'm like, well, reactionary to what? It's like, they just want to, they just want to change. They want to come out and change what they think is bad. I'm not understanding what any of that meant. I don't know if they knew how they were using the term, but I've heard this a few times before. But to define the establishment, Mike, wouldn't you say it is that the establishment doesn't want to roll back the progressive conception and the progressive movement over the past 100 years to centralize control and to centralize government in more of a ubiquitous federal government with their various appendages overriding state sovereignty, and that the establishment of both parties wants to maintain that power in their hands at the expense of individual liberty and state sovereignty?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The establishment of the Democratic Party and the establishment of the Republican Party you split hairs there as much as you do between Ted Cruz and Rand Paul almost. They have some minor differences. I mean, Republicans are pro-life, Democrats are pro-choice. This is one of the areas, pro-gun, anti-gun. But even Republicans will support more gun legislation when it comes down to the final vote and when it comes to pressure. The establishment is about continuing the centralization of government power and the transition of power from the state governments to the federal government. Mm-hmm. If you're in the Republican establishment or the Democratic establishment, you believe that power should be vested in the central government, and that's basically the establishment. And to me, Marco Rubio doesn't even fit that bill. I don't know where people are getting this narrative from that he's establishment. I don't like Rubio as much as I like Ted Cruz or Rand Paul, but I certainly don't. I think that he's more conservative, and I think that he would be someone that would try to decentralize government a little bit. That's the establishment to me. People that think the central government needs to maintain control of the states.
Okay, that's a good. I mean, to me, that's the definition: is that the progressives have worked so hard to centralize everything, stack the courts, to change the law through jurisprudence, to change the law through delegating duties that the Congress traditionally had and is constitutionally dictated to have or enumerated to have, that they've given to the administrative state or the executive, and that they just don't want to change these things, and that they certainly don't want to change term limits or line item vetoes or block grants because they love lobbyists. And you'll never see that happen, even though Rand, I think, has tried to push through an amendment on term limits. You'll hear it for about 3 days, and then it just dies.
Wasn't that Ted Cruz, actually?
Huh?
I thought that was Ted Cruz.
I think it was Rand. I don't know.
There we go again.
Yeah, Kevin, would you agree with that? We often hear people talk about the establishment, but would you agree with that type of it's a broad definition, and it could be shortened, but what do you think?
I agree with what Mike said. I don't know necessarily how to define an establishment candidate. I said this last time.
Not in a definition of the establishment candidate, but the establishment itself. Just so we can so people can understand what we're talking about. I agree with him on Rubio, but I mean, just as what is the establishment?
Right. Well, the establishment is they're the ones that are the ones that I assume it means they're the ones who are to get along the best with the leadership. They're the ones who always vote the same way as the rest of the party. The ones who don't rock the boat. Now, I don't see Rubio. I almost think the narrative is meant to disparage Rubio because everybody's saying that this is a non-establishment year. Everybody's saying this is a year where if you're an establishment candidate, you're going to lose. And then they turn around and say Rubio's an establishment candidate. And I think that I think the left genuinely fears a Marco Rubio candidacy in a general election. And I think it's a subtle way of sort of disparaging him by calling him establishment because, like I said, he came in with the Tea Party crowd and he's made a lot of noises and he's definitely been somebody. I mean, I guess you could call him establishment because they asked him to do the State of the Union rebuttal one year. I mean, does that make him establishment?
No.
I don't know why they're calling him establishment, but it's caught on, and it's just become an established sort of narrative that's really caught on. But
I think part of the reason with Rubio and where he lacks a little bit of support, and then Grant can follow up, and then I want to get into the media again with Julia, is that he rarely mentions the Constitution or the rule of law. And I do see him pander. I saw him at Liberty Fest. He talked all about markets and market this, market free. I don't hear him talk about it anywhere else. I don't hear. I mean, he's a shrewd politician. I hear his speeches. He rarely addresses actual things. Talks about the 21st century, and perhaps it's a smart way to campaign. But I don't ever hear him I don't hear him standing for something solid like a Rand Paul or a Ted Cruz, who are out there saying the villain is this overbearing government, and my job is to restrain government. I don't see that much from Rubio. I see him kind of towing a line a little bit between what the establishment wants and what the conservative base wants. I'm not saying it's necessarily stupid, but it just seems that he lacks like a real central issue or something that he stands for. What do you think, Grant?
When Marco Rubio was the senator, or he is a senator from Florida, but when I was living in Florida, I remember when he was running for Senate. I forgot, it was a while ago, and I didn't really even like him back then. He did seem very pandering. He did? Oh yeah, fundraisers with everybody and their mother, and if you had money to give, he would show up at your front door, that kind of thing. But one of the things, and we were talking about this earlier today, Mike and I think, is Marco Rubio's foreign policy is really a continuation of the Bush doctrine, and I think if you're going to have a foreign policy, you have to be aggressive when you have to be aggressive, or don't be aggressive at all. You know what I mean? And his is just, and it's really what Obama's been. It's just dip your toe in the water, have this like PC war where it's like kind of off screen but not really, and you can just kill so many civilians per day and kind of sort of get away with it, but at the end you don't accomplish anything at all, other than like we did something. And I see that a lot from him. But one thing that did always annoy me about him is, like you said too, he won't outright take a stand on anything, and unless he's in a situation where everyone in the room will agree on him.
I think you're right. I think you nailed it though when you said his foreign policy, which is very interventionist. It's too interventionist for most conservatives. It's not which has never been. The Bush doctrine has never been a conservative foreign policy.
Libya.
Huh?
He supported Libya.
Oh, who did?
Rubio.
Oh, Rubio did? Gaddafi? Or he supported the intervention there?
The intervention, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's insane to me. So, and also not, the thing of we should have, well, whatever. But I just think that's what killed him. The NSA spying thing, too, the data mining is killing him, certainly with the base, and it will prevent him from ever getting that libertarian vote. But I do see a lot of even libertarians warming up to Marco Rubio and aren't really necessarily bringing up his foreign policy positions. I think mainly because he's a more likable guy. And I think that's why a lot of the people in the media like him, certainly his more establishment positions is why they like him, and to oppose Donald Trump. I don't know if you watch any of the news coverage, really. I'm sure you did. But after Iowa, I literally thought Rubio had won. I mean, all the talk was of Rubio. It was, even the Mark Thiessen was on, and this other Democrat guy said, "Oh no, I don't think Ted Cruz can win. I think that's, this is all Rubio." This is right after Ted Cruz just won Iowa with the largest turnout in history, with the most votes that any Republican's ever gotten, and the only Republican candidate to ever win without supporting ethanol mandates. So it seems like they're really leaning that way. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Actually, I was hoping you would bring this up. I was watching the coverage, and that seemed, everyone trying to guess who's going to win. And then immediately afterwards, after they got through Ted Cruz's speech, well, Rubio had spoken first, but then they got through Cruz's speech, and all the coverage was focused on Rubio. And I was like, is this, sort of Fox's pick, or is this like their next guy that they're going to be touting? Because nothing was about the winner. It was all about Rubio's speech and how well Rubio performed. And so it kind of leads one to wonder, why was that? Why wasn't the discussion more focused on the winner of that evening, which was Ted Cruz?
Mm-hmm. Kevin, did you notice the same thing?
Oh, yeah, I definitely noticed it. But to a certain extent, I disagree with the implication that it wasn't the story of the night. I know that there were three stories, really. There was Ted Cruz obviously winning, There was Trump losing. That's just as big a story.
Right.
And then there was Rubio overachieving. So I think there were 3 stories of the night, but you're right. I mean, it got the Rubio angle. And if you actually listened to Rubio's speech, it was a victory speech.
Yep.
He came in 3rd place,
It
and
was.
Yet it was a victory speech.
They
And
said we couldn't do it.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. And I thought that was unseemly, frankly. I think he should have. He did congratulate Ted Cruz, which I thought was good. But I think the media has really played this with a narrative pushing type of agenda. In fact, I wanted to bring up the fact that just earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, I don't know when it broke, but Trump is saying now that Cruz stole the election because he told people that Carson had dropped out of the race, and or was going to drop out of the race, and apparently one of his people did provide a memo that said, tonight Ben Carson has announced that he's going to take time off after this Iowa primary or Iowa caucus, and please tell his supporters that, and hopefully they'll align with us. Now Trump is now saying that that's effectively how he lost. That by Cruz stealing Carson voters, which there's no evidence of, by the way, but that's how he ended up overachieving. Now, here's the thing. I watched CNN. I was watching CNN when they made the announcement that Ben Carson is taking time off from the campaign. That's where Cruz got this whole.
Right.
That's where he heard it. I was watching it, and I almost wrote a post on it saying, breaking news, Ben Carson looks like he's dropping out of the race, because the way that CNN presented it, it was indeed. It's made it. Wolf Blitzer was like, "Wow, that's a major, major announcement." I mean, he really pushed it.
CNN did read Ted Cruz's statement, and they were kind of like on Cruz's side. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
Yeah, they read off Cruz's statement apologizing to Carson, and Cruz in the statement said, "I saw on CNN that he was going to take some time off and return home to Florida," and so CNN was kind of like, conciliatory towards Cruz and that debacle, which I thought was interesting.
Not the latest. I mean, just before we came on, I was watching. Erin Burnett, I think, is who was on, and she was talking to a Cruz campaign manager, and she was all over him. I mean, she was basically denying.
Erin Burnett's the opposite of.
She was denying that CNN implied that Carson was, and they were. I watched it live. They were definitely implying that he was going to end his campaign.
Right, and that's what I heard too. And Erin Burnett is the firebrand there at that station. She's opposite of Bill O'Reilly, so she has to get viewers.
I would say that I agree with Kevin. I was actually watching CNN Live at that exact time too, and my impression from that report was that, well, Ben Carson just must be tired of this race. He might be dropping out if he doesn't do well in Iowa. I thought the same exact thing.
Because he always looks tired.
Well, that's
low energy.
The way CNN framed that story, it did sound like he intended to drop out of the race after Iowa. I thought he might, based on that story. So I don't really know what the big deal is. And Ted Cruz said, well, if he's not dropping out, I'm sorry. That's the impression that we got from the story. That's the impression I got from the story.
Isn't that what you and Grant were talking about, though, like prior to the caucuses, that Ben Carson was talking and you guys are saying he just looks tired and he wants to go home?
He looks like he took a bunch of painkillers on stage.
He always looks like he's on heroin. That's what I think.
Yeah.
He probably did. He's a doctor. He's got access to all that.
Propofol, the thing that Michael Jackson would take to sleep.
Horse tranquilizer.
Oh, poor Carson, probably the nicest guy in the race.
I know.
Him and Rand, probably two of the nicest, best guys. And look at Rand. He missed the Iowa fair because he's helping impoverished children overseas retain their eyesight. You know what I mean? Imagine these things got mentioned more. And he does that in the States, too.
Hey, Julia, I want to ask you really quick. You interviewed Ben Carson. I mean, he's kind of enigmatic. How did he come across to you?
Like you said, a little tired, but he was very, very nice. What was interesting was for the other politicians, you sort of had to elbow your way in and harass their campaign staff, and for him, it was just, oh yeah, hop on in, ask a question. So I definitely appreciated that. But nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's helped a ton of people. Like I said, him and Rand are probably two of the nicest guys, who's probably helped the most people just through being doctors and what they do, which rarely, really rarely, if ever, gets mentioned. I never heard about Rand and what he did for people's eyesight. Did you guys?
Not mainstream media outlets. I mean, I saw like his Facebook pages posting about it and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
because Rand's a politician. I mean, Ben
Right.
Carson's claim to fame is
Fox
he's a
News,
doctor.
I know Fox News did a little piece on that, talking
Oh, they
about
did?
how he was doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, Rand was a doctor long before he was a politician. Yeah, but I see what you're saying. He's entrenched in the political class now. But same with Rand, same with Cruz. I wanted to talk about them in the Senate, and kind of part of the reason too why they're disliked is they kind of broke up that old boys club in the Senate. You're a freshman, you can't do that. Kind of like this old Ted Kennedy, LBJ type of backdoor dealing, them bullying freshman senators, and they have these unofficial rules in the Senate. And you have these guys like Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz come in and just kind of smash down the doors, and it's kind of, I think, upsetting that established political class, these long-time senators that have been in there for years, and that's really what's kind of bothering them. What do you think, Kevin? Would you agree with that?
Actually, I think you put your finger on it in terms of what the establishment is. Something that Rubio has been saying lately has been that he was told by the establishment that it's not his turn. In other words, now, of course, he's probably lying. He's probably just made up a good line and he's using it. But the point is probably is valid in a certain way. And I'm sure that they did have a candidate in mind who has worked his way up through the ranks of the Republican Party. I don't know if that would be a Jeb Bush. I mean, but I'm sure it wasn't his turn. I'm sure it's not Ted Cruz's turn. It's these are the young guys. They've barely been in politics, in the Senate at least, for not that long. And I mean, we used to have people like Bob Dole, getting put out there, who was 117 years old when he ran for president. And
Yeah,
now we got these young guys who think that they have the gall to actually run against the people who've been around forever.
Right? Don't you and Bob Dole share a birthday?
Yeah, no, I'm his
Same year,
godfather,
same day.
actually. Yeah.
You are? Okay. Bob Dole did come out and comment on this race and said he would rather vote for Trump than Cruz. And
Yeah,
I don't think that would be any different if Rand Paul was in Cruz's shoes. In fact, I know it. So I just think that now we have all these people that are going after Ted Cruz that would go after Rand, and then you have Rand supporters piling on top of that. That's just kind of unsettling. It's like I wrote a little blurb about that, Cruz and Rand, conservatives don't need to attack Rand as an isolationist, or establishment doesn't need to attack him as such, and libertarians and establishment types don't need to attack Cruz. They're going to get it enough from left-wing kooks. Why are they doing it? I don't understand. We'll hear it plenty from them. I don't know why everybody needs to pile on, but I do want to get to what you mentioned, Kevin, and that's the impact of Trump losing. I think that's huge. I think that here's a guy that was built, I'm a winner, I'm going to win. He lost. He lost in Iowa. I do want to mention about Rubio, though. He did spend more than Trump and Cruz combined in Iowa. He did spend, I think, 11-point-something million. Cruz spent 7.4 million. Trump only 3.5 million. So, I mean, Rubio did put a lot of time into Iowa, rightly so. But what do you think the impact is on Trump, Mike, that here's a guy that lost and almost came in third? Do you think that hurts his brand now as this big winner? And do you think that makes him look more vulnerable to voters, that he's not this invincible, the inevitable winner, and that they're like, oh, I could break off and go for someone else?
I think it's interesting because when Donald Trump gave his speech after Iowa, he gave a very kind concession speech. He talked about how happy he was with his results and his second place finish, something that you'd think you'd never hear from Donald Trump. He congratulated Ted Cruz on a well-earned victory, and he almost didn't sound like Donald Trump. And then
it was his best moment of the campaign. It was literally his best moment I've seen of him.
It was really bizarre almost. And then of course we get the real Donald Trump now today.
Right.
Ted Cruz stole the election. It was fraud, yada yada. And you see how we kind of expected him to react from losing. I do think it kind of damages him, and I wonder what his talking points will be in the next debate. Because if you remember some of these debates, Donald Trump's rebuttal to everything was how up in the polls he was and how invincible he was and how much support he had everywhere. And then here comes Iowa, he loses, and that little point, he might not be able to hammer that home as well anymore. Like, oh, well, you were up in the polls, Donald, but you still lost. And I think that's going to be a little kind of a kick to his psyche there. It'll be interesting to see. I think he will win New Hampshire, and maybe he'll regain it. Mm-hmm. But there's a debate coming up here, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles losing. I don't, obviously, based on his tweeting and his comments today, he doesn't handle it well, and he's not used to being in that position.
I mean, do you think people should count Trump out?
No, I don't think people should count Trump out. I think that he still has a lot of support. One thing with Trump's support, though, is a lot of people really love Donald Trump and want to vote for him. There's a lot of people that have candidates that Ted Cruz is their second choice or Marco Rubio is their second choice. There's not a lot of people that have Donald Trump as their second choice. So I think that can turn out to hurt him down the road, but he still has a lot of support. And as long as the field is large, I think that he has a chance to win. I don't think that he's doomed.
Right.
I said on our New Year's prediction show that I thought Rubio was going to win the nomination and eventually the presidency. I still do think that. But, no, he's not done. He's not going to – he still has a chance, but it definitely hurts him a little bit.
That's interesting. Kevin, on Trump, what do you think the implications are of him losing? Oh, he's gone. Good. We don't like him anyway. I hope he doesn't come back on. Julia, do you think, though, I mean, do you think Trump's loss is bigger than most people? I think actually a lot of people are saying it's a big deal, actually. I think some people may actually count him out, but I think after he wins, I think if he does win New Hampshire, he'll be right back on track. I mean, Reagan lost Iowa, too. A lot of candidates have lost Iowa and still went on to win the presidency. But what do you think? Do you think it really harms his brand?
Well, I think if anything, he learned that maybe he has to put a little bit of effort into it. When I was down in Iowa, all he had to do was fly around the fair twice, and there was more people talking about him than the politicians that spent the entire day shaking hands, grilling pork, and speaking on the soapbox. So maybe he's finding, maybe I have to get out of the helicopter and actually talk to people. But I think if he puts just a little bit of effort in, he'll be back on top. So I don't think it's as damaging as what people think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when he was he spent the less in Iowa, and he also spent the least amount of time there, out of Cruz and Rubio. Cruz spent the most amount of time. Rubio spent the most amount of money. But that's an interesting take on it too. I think maybe if he see, the thing is I was thinking perhaps Trump would change the way he campaigns too. And today, like you said, he sounds just like a sore loser. He's doing the same thing he's been doing, and you thought perhaps maybe he would do more of the handshaking, more of the traditional campaigning, and he's just out there now. He just sounds like a sore loser. But Grant, I want to get to you on this one and the Trump supporters. It's like anytime I bring up issues, and I'm going to get to Kevin too, anytime you bring up issues with a Trump supporter, they just shout you down. It's just kind of like, oh, he's going to make America great again. Literally, like that. This is what you get. I go, well, the guy doesn't really support property rights. He favors like this an oddball eminent domain like that is for a public purpose as opposed to public use. And not to mention his protectionism, his whatever his tariffs were on Chinese imports, it was outrageous. So it's like, why is it? It's similar to me to Paul bots to a degree. That once you start to discuss issues, it's impossible to get these fervent supporters. It's impossible to get through to them.
Since only like 500 people are going to watch this, I'm gonna reveal a little secret here today on the show. We Are Capitalists a few months ago did a video on Donald Trump and his tariff plan for China and why that is terrible for free trade. The Trump supporters came out in droves to make America great again. We're going to win, blah, blah, blah.
No argument, right?
No argument, just we're going to make America great again. And then about, 2-3 weeks ago, we released another video attacking tariffs, except we were attacking Bernie Sanders. Now, these two videos were the exact same videos. There was nothing different other than who they were attacking and obviously each person's quotes. Trump supporters came out in droves saying, oh, this communist socialist guy is going to ruin this country, blah, blah, blah. we even had Trump pages sharing this video,
Yeah.
thinking that like it was like a Bernie Sanders hit job or something, when it was the exact same video on their candidate, and it was just a different person, and they loved it. They ate it up.
It's just a cult of personality thing.
And
It's
we're
just
going to be calling everyone out on that soon, but that is you're exactly right. It's a cult of personalities. I thought that, and then when we did that video release, it confirmed it. That it is a cult of personalities.
I just don't get why you have to like, you know, kiss the butt of your favorite candidate, and that all of a sudden they become some sort of luminary, and you have to become an acolyte. I don't understand.
I'm gonna run for president. I think I can win with Trump and Sanders in the race. It can't be that hard, right?
You would get clobbered by Austin Peterson, Grant. So don't even try to think. Don't even think about it. Destroy you.
It would be the least hygienic campaign ever.
I'll be the only one with a criminal record.
That's true. Oh man, this is funny. You guys both do love guns, though. You'd have to duke it out on this. Who's more of a gun nut? You know, you may actually have to shoot yourself in the arm.
Maybe Grant can get in a debate with Austin, like he got in with Chris Cantwell about who's banged the most females.
Oh my God! Let's just suppose that he was in a general election. That would just destroy him.
Austin Peterson?
That was rough.
Yeah, like how many
Classy.
president call into a radio show to have a debate about that?
I just couldn't believe my ears when I listened to that. I was like, please. I was embarrassed for him a little bit.
It was
you
so
know?
Cringe. It was clearly two guys who clearly didn't get laid in high school going at it about how well they're doing now. You know.
That sucked. That was one of Austin's low moments, though. I think he's made up for it. He's doing Look, the guy's doing a good job. He even got Glenn Beck to mention him. That's more than I can do.
He's going to lose to Gary Johnson.
I don't know. Maybe he might eke out past Johnson.
Feel the Johnson.
You think so?
The Republican Party of Michigan actually supports Austin Peterson, most of it, from what I can see. So that's good, interesting.
Look, there's one thing Austin does really well, and it's marketing. You know what I mean? He's an excellent marketer.
You guys are lunatics.
He is. And certainly on social media, and that's where a lot of Ron Paul's support came from. That's where a lot of Rand Paul's support came from.
Oh, so he's the new Ron Paul now. Austin Peterson.
That's not what I said.
New Ron Paul.
God.
I'm going to break this on Unbiased America right after the show.
I hate you.
Bill endorses Austin Peterson.
I would rather endorse Austin Peterson. I like his platform.
Well, I would too, over most of the candidates.
Yeah, I don't
think he's got a chance in hell because
I think he's a nice guy. I like him. He's been nice to me. He's ambitious. Go ahead.
Like I said last week, you're going to have Sanders is going to win the Democratic nomination. Trump's going to win the Republican nomination. Michael Bloomberg's going to jump into the race. All these votes are going to split. Meanwhile, Austin Peterson's going to sneak in and win the vote.
I thought of that scenario actually myself. I want to get to the winners and losers of the week. I know that you losers, sans Julia, obviously didn't pick winners and losers, but you can think about who you want to pick for the week. I'm sure it's not.
Why do you never tell the guests that we do?
Wait, can I just pick a random person? Or?
Yeah.
You can pick anything.
Will's been the loser of the week like 12 times.
I like to do it off the cuff though, kind of. It's good. Grant, do you need a minute?
Yeah, no, I can go.
Go ahead.
All right, so my losers of the week are libertarians, really losers of the day. I mean, I wrote a post, and you people come out like you're all insane. First of all, I'm convinced that half of you are insane. There are some rational libertarians out there, which is very, very, very good for us. But then the rest of you are just batshit crazy, I think. Calling me a neocon because I endorse someone who's not 100% libertarian. I mean,
modern neocon.
Really change the name of my page. That's your response. And it's anyway. My winner of the week is probably going to have to be Ted Cruz, because one, it angers libertarians when I say that, and two, because I think he did a really good job at Iowa. I mean, he had a good showing. I watched his speech. It was very good. I saw that video of the guy who confronted him about the ethanol subsidies, and I think he delivered a perfect response. And that was actually a pretty popular video around the internet. So he won, and no, he's not 100% ideologically pure, but you know what? If I can get halfway there, then fine.
Right. I don't know who I have ever totally agreed with. have
No.
differences with Ted Cruz too. My one big difference is he sounds kind of preacherish sometimes. I hate that.
That's because of his dad, though.
I know. No, I'm not saying he speaks well and he's always measured, certainly in debates. I've never seen the guy get angry, really. But he kind of has this preacherish thing that bothers me. But then again, I am from New York and I live in California, and I know that may be appealing to people in the middle of the country. But, Mike, do you need a minute?
No, I'm good.
Go ahead.
I figured everybody was going to go with Ted Cruz as the winner of the week, and maybe Donald Trump or someone else's loser of the week. So I'm going to go a little off. I think my loser of the week is going to be Chris Christie. My loser of the week is Chris Christie because he gave all this fuel. He is talking about how he's going to come first among governors, because apparently being a governor makes you the most qualified to be president. You can't be a senator and be president. He's talking about how he's going to be first among governors in Iowa. He got clobbered in Iowa. He's low in the polls in New Hampshire, where he's put a ton of eggs in that basket. So, and I'm predicting that he's gonna get clobbered in New Hampshire too. So that's my loser of the week. My winner of the week is a prediction, and it's going to be John Kasich, who I don't like. He's going to finish second in New Hampshire, and Kasich mania will continue on. So that's going to be my winner of the week.
How is that a winner of the week? You're making it. That's your prediction of the week.
It's a prediction because next show, maybe I'm wrong, and then Kasich won't even be a topic for discussion anymore. So I got to get him in here one time.
I knew somebody was going to bring Kasich up. Kevin, go ahead.
Well, my winner is sort of a tie between Rubio and Cruz. I think both of them really cemented their names at the top in terms of who's going to become a president. It's going to be one of them. I still think Trump's going to peter out. You know, I bought into that narrative that when the field starts being narrowed down, that the other candidates' supporters are going to go for somebody other than Trump. I still buy into that. I still think that's going to happen. And I think maybe we're starting to see a little of that happening with Cruz winning in Iowa and Rubio doing so much better, overperforming. My loser of the week is Rand Paul. I mean, I thought he dropped out too soon too, but he does have a tough election coming up. So maybe it was good timing on his part. But I mean, he had everything going for him for a while. I mean, we went to CPAC last year, and you know, he every year they vote him the CPAC straw poll winner is either him or his father. And he's got the young people loved him. That everyone was on his side. It was supposed to be his year, and he just ran a horrible campaign. And I think that his major problem was his personality. I think he just came across as eye-rolling and abrasive, and he didn't win his confrontations with Trump. I just think he mangled his campaign, and I think he really is the loser of the campaign so far, although maybe Governor Walker is, right up there with him in terms of missed potential.
Well, you're a statist. Okay. Let's move on to Julia. Who are your winners and losers?
Well, I would say my loser of the week is Donald Trump, because he was such a big talker about how easy it was going to be to win Iowa, and I think it was almost, even though he came in second, an embarrassing defeat. And my winner of the week, this is going to sound cheesy, but it's me, because I get to be on Unbiased America with all of you guys from now on.
That's very nice, and when you say all of you guys, you mean me. So thank you. Yeah.
Actually, you're the loser of the week, because now you're going to be exposed to Will every single week.
All right. Now on to what I have to say. Where would you get that? You're a sick person. All right.
What are you talking about?
Let's just keep that up on the screen.
He looks like Jaws from the old Bond movies, doesn't he?
Look at that grill.
Look at my
That is horrible. Get that out of here.
Hello.
Okay. My winner of the week is obviously Iowa, because somebody gave a crap about it finally. No one ever gives a crap about Iowa until there's a presidential, or the caucuses. So Iowa's the big winner, and now everyone will promptly forget Iowa exists. My loser of the week is the Medicaid and Medicare, because of Grant Phillips' work and his research over there at We Are Capitalists. You can find it there and at the Modern Libertarian. and when he talks about reimbursement rates of Medicare and the problems that causes when you distort prices and how people respond to these things as rational entities, and that they're really awful, and it's a bad, yes, you get, to a degree if doctors are willing to get medical care, but these things come at a cost. And it's the cost-benefit scenario works out really poorly in either's favor. And Grant, you can find that stuff at his page, The Modern Neocon, and at We Are Capitalists. And by the Modern Neocon, I mean the Modern Libertarian. I also wanted to talk about a couple of shows coming up. There's one on Liberty.me on Sunday night. Oh, nope, that's not right. Nope, I'm sorry, Sunday, February 7th. There's one with Jeffrey Tucker and Joey Clark. Jeffrey Tucker's the CEO of Liberty.me, and Joey Clark writes for Liberty.me, and they're talking about the true meaning of freedom. And Mike Reed has a show with Troy Lanigan, who's the president and CEO of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, because apparently somebody cares about Canada. I'm just kidding. People do care about Canada. It's called Scotch and Scholars, and that's on Wednesday, February 10th at 7:30. You can find this all at Liberty.me. On the website under the live section, or you can also find it on their Liberty.me's Google Plus page, which you should follow, and you should also follow their YouTube page, because that's where all our new videos post. Also, please follow Julia Aaron, her personal fan page. You can find it by typing in her name, and you can see it there written on the screen, because we're really because
just like Kevin.
Oh, God.
Because I forgot what I was going to say, but you can find her there, and also at Alpha News. That's where all your new broadcasts go, right onto Facebook, onto the Facebook page. Julia?
Yeah, just Julia Aaron.
And
Julia,
but you're Alpha News too, right?
What does Alpha News do?
We cover politics mostly in Minnesota, but we occasionally will cover national stories, and we'll go down to Iowa and interview the national candidates. But we mostly cover reckless spending and things that are going on that shouldn't be.
Do you have any big projects coming up?
None that I can tell you about.
You know what? This is ridiculous. She's not telling us anything.
I know.
She's got the scoop on all the candidates, and she's being all secretive.
I really
I'm going to plug what I'm doing right now. I'm working on this, which is it lists where all the candidates are in terms of the ideological spectrum. I'm going to post it right after the show is over. I've actually posted a similar one before, but go to Unbiased America if you want to see that.
Oh, and also Unbiased America has an Instagram page, and you can follow us there too, and it's picking up some steam. So
Kevin, there's only two sides. There's
yeah,
only
I know.
two sides of the ideological spectrum, and it's statist and libertarian.
It's a matter of degree, yeah. Statist, and remember that or if you're a minarchist, you're a statist.
No, still statist.
Yep.
It's a okay, minarchy is statist. Okay.
Yeah, so it's there's no gray area.
So it's anarcho-capitalist and then statist.
It's statist.
Okay, got it. Glad we nailed that down. But thank you everybody for watching. We will be back promptly next week with hopefully the same panel. And go Rand Paul. Thanks again.